A few years back, the tap in my kitchen sink started dripping. Nothing big, just one small drop. I saw it while making coffee and I told myself, I'll get to it tomorrow. Might be a loose washer, I'll fix it tomorrow. The next day morning, I heard it again. And this time, I thought, I'm a little busy today. I'll get it to it this weekend. A few weeks passed. I forgot about the noise. My brain filtered it as normal noise. And later one day, when I opened the cabin under the sink, I was shocked. The wood at the base had rotted. The board at the back was stained black. And a mold had started forming. I was no longer fixing a small washer in the tap. I was calling my plumber to do an emergency overhaul of the entire kitchen cabinet. And then, looking at that and the big bill that I got, I brought in the best defense line that we all use in such situations. If only I knew. But the truth, I knew it. There was a signal. I chose to ignore it. And today, in workplaces, there is a signal that's coming up. And it cannot be ignored. There was a high performer in my team. Talented, young, vibrant, bringing in new ideas every day. And I thought it was time to promote him. So I called him for a discussion and offered him that promotion. A good title, bigger pay, and more visibility. And then he said, "No, thanks." And I was surprised. Somebody saying no to a promotion? I asked him why. He said, "Vijay, I don't want to be you." And that shocked me. Because on paper, I was a role model leader. I've grew up the career ladder too fast to the top. I inspire and influence many of them even today. I believe in building future leaders. And then he tells me that. I was shocked. It unsettled me. But it also brought a bigger question. What kind of game produces winners who don't want to win? Because if you look at the traditional corporate career, for decades it's been the same. It's a straight, simple game. You study hard, work harder, stay loyal, and you will climb up. It is mathematical. Work, patience, success. And it worked for many of us here. But the game has changed. The rules are going to change. And it is because a new player is in town. The next generation is entering the workforce. Welcome the Gen Z. Now, Gen Z are making a statement. This pattern is happening across industries, across organizations. They're making a clear statement, and that is what we call today the conscious unbossing. Gen Z are not saying, "I don't like my boss." They're basically saying, "I don't want to be my boss." They are looking at the pressure, they are looking at the stress, they are looking at the lack of family time, and they're asking themselves, is it worth it? So when an offer for promotion comes in, they're asking themselves the question, by accepting this, what am I going to lose? What happens to my time? What happens to my energy? What happens to my relationships? And if there is no good answer, they stay back. They don't take the responsibility. And this pattern is also showing up in a recent study. The scary study tells us that only 6% of Gen Z actually want to go up the ladder and become traditional leaders. 6%. Now it could be 4, it could be 6, it could be 8, but the direction is clear. Gen Z don't want to lead. Now if Gen Z don't want to lead, there is going to be a leadership vacuum. And if there is a leadership vacuum, who's going to lead your organization in 2035? Now that question is not dramatic, it's practical. And that is why it becomes very important for us to start redesigning leadership. And we can't redesign leadership if we don't go beyond the surface. If you ask anyone about Gen Z, the thought in the mind is, oh, are they ready yet? Do they even know what they are talking about? Are they committed? Or they're always in their own world. They don't care about the others. Do they even have responsibility? Those are the questions that you will see. Now, if you go beneath the surface, is when you will understand what is making them take this decision. And when you know that, you can start redesigning leadership. So when someone is not picking up your call at 10 p.m., it is not lack of commitment. It is boundary setting. Gen Z grew up in a world where the talks about mental health, stress, burnout were happening. And they felt setting the right boundaries is the right thing to do. So boundaries are not barriers for performance. In fact, boundaries are foundation for sustained performance. When Gen Z tells you, why are we doing it this way? It is not defiance. They are looking for purpose. And if you can align the work with purpose, it matters. Because in the world that they grew up in, there were too much noise coming around, and it was important for them to filter out what was the right thing. So it gives us an opportunity to align everything that we do with purpose. When they question you or a process, that is not disrespect. It gives us an opportunity to evolve. Leadership has evolved for many years, and this time we are in for a major upgrade. Look at that as an opportunity, because they are co-creators. They started creating when they were young, be it on social media or any platform. They started creating, and they love to be co-creators. So if you want them to be your creators, ask them 2 questions. What can I do? Or what do you think? The moment you ask these questions, you put yourself in the problem solving and you invite them to find the solutions. And that is how the modern leadership will look like. Now, when the promotion offer I gave was rejected, he wasn't rejecting the role. He was rejecting what it stood for. Traditionally, we have always associated leadership with this: the title, the hierarchy, the visible sacrifice, the constant availability, the shiny status symbols. And Gen Z are now asking, why do they even matter anymore? So that makes it more important to redesign leadership. And redesign starts with small steps. Redesign your next meeting. Make it short and meaningful. Redesign the next expectation. Make it aligned with purpose. Redesign the next norm that glorifies exhaustion. Start valuing small things. I leave you with this question. If someone shadowed your professional life for a week, would they want it? Would you want it? If the answer is no, start redesigning. Because if leadership feels purposeful, sustainable, and aligned with human values, we make leadership attractive again for the next generation. The future feels human if we choose to build it that way. The future feels human if we unlock the potential of the next generation. Thank you very much.